Coming in at number 10, we have clashing with directors. Now, we all know you can never really trust anything written in the tabloids, as it's blown way out of proportion. So when reports started to arise last week saying Johnny Depp was reportedly sabotaging his own career as he came back with old habits, we were left wondering what was truly going on with the star. While you think Johnny Depp would be on his best behavior following his massive public trial early last year, it seems strange that the actor would intentionally have a downfall after he was set to make a major comeback with Jean de Barry. However, rumors have been circulating from the set of the upcoming film that Johnny and the French director have been clashing. Actor Bernard Motel shared rumors from the set on the French talk show Don't Touch My TV set, where he said, "I heard some noise from the shoot, very serious stuff." So Depp is an excellent actor when he comes on set, except sometimes it's 6 in the morning, the crew is ready, and nobody turns up. So of course, Myween, who is the director, gets angry, and the next day, she's the one who doesn't turn up, and you got Johnny Depp, and she's not there. It's finished over this week, but it's going very badly. They don't get on at all. They're screaming at each other the whole time. Now, people not getting along in the industry is actually a pretty common thing, and when you get as big as Johnny Depp, you can definitely be late for a film set every now and then. However, you can't expect him to show up on time when the director of the movie isn't doing the same thing. Either way, with neither of the two commenting on the rumors, it's hard to say if they actually aren't getting along and there's problems, but it's most likely just a very smart PR move, if anything. Number 9. Finding his true self. Now, one can say that finding your true self is an act of love, and expressing it is an act of rebellion. When Johnny found himself being labeled as a wife after allegations started to come forward saying he was physically abusive towards his ex-wife, Amber Heard, more than 7 years ago, Johnny Depp would lose everything. With the judgment being so flawed, what would be shown in court would prove that the relationship between Amber and Johnny had become gruesomely toxic. While Johnny started spiraling out of control, turning to substances to combat the pain of losing everything, Amber did everything she could to humiliate him. While Johnny has always been usually eloquent for an A-lister with a courtly, old-fashioned conversational style, to watch him self-destruct in front of our eyes due to lies and manipulation was definitely heartbreaking. Johnny forgot who he was, and he entered into this defamation trial against Amber Heard last year. He would finally be able to prove to the world that he was innocent. After winning the trial, it's clear that Johnny has been on the road to recovery, and with it, he's been trying to find his true self so he can feel completely whole again. However, before you're able to find your true self, it can be pretty sabotaging, as the critical inner voice doesn't represent a positive sense of self that you can entrust, and rather it epitomizes a cruel anti-self that's inside us. This then gets turned against us. It casts doubts at our abilities, undermines our desires, and convinces us to be paranoid and suspicious towards others and those close to us. Then these anti-self ideas probably filled Johnny's mind with critical self-analysis and self-sabotaging thoughts, which has led him to hold back or steer away from his true goals.
Number 10. Therapist notes. As Amber Heard continues to try and defend herself despite no longer being on the stand, she said she has therapist notes that prove she was a victim of mistreatment by Johnny Depp. She revealed the information in her tell-all interview and has already started receiving backlash in regards to it. She said, "There's a binder worth of years of notes dating back to 2011, from the very beginning of my relationship, that was taken by my doctor who I was reporting the abuse to. The notes were originally not submitted into the trial as evidence, apparently due to fears of them being seen as hearsay. People on the internet seem to be accusing her of having written the notes herself. One person on the internet who claimed to be a therapist said, "I was a therapist for a decade. I worked in child protection and DV and hospitals. Therapists never write like this. We use short form notes, underheadings with lots of abbreviations and acronyms." And they're also pointing out similarities between Amber's own writing and the so-called therapist notes. Many people seeming to believe that the notes are totally fake. Number 9. 20K Airbnb. After the verdict was reached and Amber was ordered to pay $10.35 million to Depp, many people were wondering how she would be able to pay him, especially when her lawyer Elaine said in an interview that Heard definitely didn't have the means to pay it. So people were shocked when they found out where she had been staying during the trial. It was revealed that she was staying in an over $20,000 a month mansion in Virginia throughout the course court proceedings. It's touted as one of the most luxurious private estates in the area, being 13,000 square feet in total and just a 25-minute drive from the courthouse. Witnesses reported seeing Heard at the property alongside her sister and daughter, as well as her entire security team. So while her net worth and her lawyer's statements make it seem like she doesn't have much to spare, she might have much more than we're aware of. Number 8. Aquaman struggles. After Amber's reputation was all but destroyed thanks to the public's and social media's involvement in the trial, many people were left wondering if she would be dropped from the upcoming sequel to Aquaman, which had already been filmed. Amber's defenders touting this as a big point of how the trial had apparently ruined her life, and attacking those who had caused it to seem that way. Well, as it turns out, her potential removal from the sequel was not the public's fault as many would want you to think, but instead her own. Amber herself revealed that her character wasn't even originally planned to be in the sequel, but that she had fought to have her character have a large role and be featured more prominently within the script. So as much as she might try to place blame on people on the internet for bullying her and ruining her career, she may want to just switch to movies that actually want her. Number 7. Jury's opinion. One story that came out immediately after the trial was that of an apparent juror who had taken to TikTok to share their experiences of being present in the courthouse. It appears that while Amber may have felt her performance on the stand was great, even though she couldn't get any tears out, people saw right through her, and the secret's out that she's maybe not a very good actress. They said that from the very beginning, they had a feeling that something was off about Amber, and that everything she was saying just had the aura of being untrue. We all saw during the trial the way she would sniffle with dry eyes, looking towards the jury to try and gain their sympathy. But the TikTokers said that they had seen right through it, and the constant eye contact and pleading had just made them all very uncomfortable, ultimately finishing it off by saying, "Amber Heard, what a crazy woman." Even her old acting coach said that when Amber was acting, she was never able to make herself cry. Number 6. The NBC tell-all. People eagerly awaited Amber Heard's interview on NBC Dateline, where she was apparently going to reveal her side of the story. But as with everything surrounding the trial, the piece was immediately met with controversy and backlash, the majority of it coming from a small editing choice. When speaking out about people in toxic relationships, she said that they, referring to people in toxic relationships, don't have the resources you or I do, explicitly excluding herself from the group of people in bad relationships. They obviously realized their mistake, as when it was released, they edited this out, and they didn't get away with it. People said things like, #Amber Heard's new interview is exactly why the trial needed to be televised live and unedited. The full Dateline interview actually edited out the slip-up about the resources she has that DV victims don't. Another fact about the interview was that she had received all the questions beforehand and had been allowed to make any editing notes to help portray their narrative. Number 5. Using Johnny's children. With the trial finished and no onslaught of new information coming out every day, people were finally able to look back over the previous days and really dissect what had been said in the trial, and even what happened in the years leading up to it. One thing that many people realized and chose to call Amber out for was her apparent manipulation of Johnny's children, and how it seemed that she had purposefully used them against him. She would often criticize Johnny's abilities as a father, saying that they needed to be raised by a real man, and as a result, the children should be raised by their stepfather instead of him. Johnny has constantly made statements about how he tries to do everything for his kids, and said that his main reason for pursuing the trial was for his children, so this had to have been a big emotional hit for him. She also used the children often in the trial against him, claiming that she had been standing up to Johnny in defense of the children, but a lot of people see this as just having been a planned move by Amber. Number 4. Moving on. During and since the trial, Amber stated many times that she always just wanted to move on from the situation and never wanted any of it to go public. Well, secret's out, Amber. It was revealed in one of her writings that she had often threatened Johnny with a large media fiasco and constantly held the chance of things going public over his head throughout their relationship. She also constantly mocked, teased, and called him out over the years after their divorce, people citing social media posts which they believe were clearly in reference to Johnny Depp. Well, it seems like she definitely got her karma, as her threats to go public came very true, and it all turned out very bad for her. The cyberbullying and hatred that she has received online seems to just come as an unfortunate result of her getting what she wanted, that being the world knowing the truth. Number 3. Secret notebook. It seems more secrets could be coming out thanks to one trial viewer's so-called so-called secret notebook that they auctioned online. They had a notebook that they wrote in from days 23 to 26 of the trial, which wrote down everything from jury reactions, Johnny's interactions with his lawyers, and even Amber's actions within the courtroom. The notebook seems to have sold for a whopping $14,000, with all the profits being said to be donated to a children's hospital. Let's just hope they mean donated and not pledged. As cameras can only show us so much, these writings may give us an insight into Amber and her actions throughout the trial that we outside were unable to see, though we may never find out, as the sale of the notebook came with the stipulation that it could not be photocopied or reproduced in any way. So we just have to wait and see if the buyer feels like sharing the contents with us. Number 2. Donation. One massive bombshell that actually came during the trial was that of Amber Heard's quote-unquote pledge to the ACLU. When Amber received $7 million from her divorce from Depp, she pledged to split the money between the ACLU and the Children's Hospital Los Angeles, saying that she would split the payments up over a few years. Up until the trial, they had only received around $1.3 million in separate installments, $100,000 of that actually coming from Johnny, and $500,000 coming from a separate account that many people believe to have been controlled by Elon Musk, whom Amber Heard had dated after she split from Johnny. So despite saying she had donated the money, she was lying through her teeth the whole time, attempting to defend herself by saying that she used the word pledge and donate synonymously. Well, you'd be the only one to do so, Amber. This was a massive part of the trial as it called into question just how many other things Amber might be trying to hide. Secrets out, Amber, you're not so great at keeping secrets. Number 1. Bruises. One main point of the trial was when Amber Heard testified to having had bruises and injuries as a result of Johnny Depp, many people accusing her of having used makeup in order to create the illusion, but she strongly testified against this, until she didn't. Her even accidentally referring to the makeup kit she used to quote-unquote cover the bruises as a bruise kit. Many people took to social media, and more specifically TikTok, in order to break down what she had been saying and expose her for lying. First coming for the method she described having used to cover up the bruises, which was entirely incorrect and out of order. But the final nail in the coffin of this lie came when people looked at photos, which showed the supposed makeup palette she had referenced using. People were able to find the exact palette that she had been using, which is literally sold as and called a theater bruise and abrasion kit. Looks like the lying cat's out of the bag on that one.
Number 10. The appeal. Elaine Bredhoft told NBC's Savannah Guthrie that she will absolutely be appealing the verdict reached in the defamation trial. Quote, "We even had to try to get the UK judgment in to dismiss this case because he already has his shot." She also goes on to speak about the evidence that supposedly did not come in. It turns out she was serious, as within a month of the verdict in Johnny Depp and Amber Heard's defamation lawsuit, Heard's legal team has officially begun the appeal process. In a lengthy filing in Virginia court on Friday, the actress's legal team is seeking to throw out the June verdict in the high-profile defamation lawsuit by arguing that the ruling had a number of issues, including poor legal reasoning, an improperly vetted jury, and excessively awarded damages. Bredhoft also insisted that Heard's medical records were suppressed and that a number of things were allowed in court that should not have been allowed in, which caused the jury to be confused. But even if the appeal is unsuccessful, it's clear that Heard believes the trial was totally rigged. Number 9. Insufficient evidence. Heard's attorneys have brought forth a 43-page memorandum which asks for the verdict in Johnny Depp's libel case to be tossed on the grounds of insufficient evidence, and with it a more than $10 million award. The main reason? Well, Heard's team argued that it was false for Depp to claim that he lost his role in Pirates of the Caribbean film series all because of her op-ed she wrote in the Washington Post, citing the fact that Depp didn't provide evidence that the op-ed was the reason he lost the role in the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. The lengthy document claims that there were articles noting he wouldn't be in the 6th film more than 2 months before Heard's essay was published, and that because Depp was never officially contracted to do a 6th film, he cannot claim damages for a film he was never contracted to do, insisting that the film was already in development without him on board before Heard's essay was even published. Number 8. Juror 15. Heard also claims that one of the jurors who served during the trial was not properly vetted, saying that there were problems with their credibility. The filing points to Juror 15 as proof, arguing that there appears to be a 25-year discrepancy between their birthday on court records and other identity documents. They urge the court to investigate whether Juror 15 properly served on the jury because their listed birth year was 1945, and according to to her attorneys, the juror was clearly born later than 1945. In fact, publicly available information demonstrates that he appears to have been born in 1970. The motion goes on to say, quote, "This discrepancy raises the question of whether or not Juror 15 actually received a summons for jury duty and was properly vetted by the court to serve on the jury," basically claiming that the jury selection was rigged because of the massive age discrepancy. Heard's legal team are hoping this alleged discrepancy can raise questions over the suitability of the jury panel as a whole. The filing also alleges that Juror 15 may be an entirely different person than who they say they are, which would completely compromise the due process of the trial. Number 7. Flawed legal logic. In court documents that were filed for Heard's appeal, Elaine Bredhoft said that the case rests on flawed legal logic, arguing that instead of proving how the op-ed negatively affected Depp's claims, they were based solely on defamation by implication theory, abandoning any claims that Heard's statements were actually false. The attorney also argued that Depp's legal team said it would focus on the period after the op-ed came out, but instead widened to encompass events and statements from way back in 2016. The filing argues that instead of proving Heard hurt his career with her 2018 essay, which is why he sued her for defamation, he was instead trying to disprove the initial 2016 domestic violence allegations, which were not up for judgment. Heard's team also claims that Depp didn't actually prove that he suffered that much financial hardship because of the op-ed. In fact, they claimed that it was very unlikely the actor would have appeared in Pirates of the Caribbean 6 after all, because he himself said he wouldn't have taken the role for $1 million alpacas. Number 6. Lack of motive. This one is really interesting. Another reason Heard's team is filing the appeal is because they claim she actually believes her own allegations. That's right, her team is arguing that what actually matters here is whether or not Heard believes that she's a real victim of domestic violence. They are saying that if she believes her own allegations, a jury can't find that she acted with malice, and that she would have written the op-ed without any bad intentions. The court documents insist that Depp's legal team never actually proved she didn't believe her own claims. In the appeal, the text says, quote, "The jury's verdict was obviously influenced by Mr. Depp's pleas in the face of the court's preclusion of Mrs. Heard's introduction of evidence that Mr. Depp had, in fact, already been tried in the court of his choice for committing 12 acts of domestic violence." So basically her team is trying to write off the verdict by saying that Heard did not have malicious intent by writing the op-ed. Number 5. Excessive damages. As a part of the appeal filed by Amber Heard's legal team, they insist that the damages awarded to her ex-husband are far too high considering the verdict. The lengthy document goes on to read, quote, "The jury's compensatory and punitive damage award were excessive as a matter of law," and added that Depp only deserved to receive reputational damages, insinuating that the damages awarded to him were blown way out of proportion. If you don't know, the two parties were found to have defamed each other in June, but the jury ruled largely in Depp's favor, awarding him $15 million in damages, while Heard was only awarded $2 million. The judge later lessened the punitive damages to $350,000, citing limits set by state law. Following the trial, Heard's lawyer said in June that the actor wouldn't be able to pay the monetary penalty awarded to Depp, but Judge Penny told Heard's attorney that if she wanted to appeal the verdict, she would have to put up an $8.35 million bond with an annual 6% interest. Representatives for Heard have said that she does not have the money to pay Depp or meet the bond, so not sure how that's going to happen. Number 4. Discrediting witnesses. Following her lawyer, Elaine Bredhoft, Heard in fact claimed that the actor paid the witnesses brought by him for their testimonies. In a shocking clip released by NBC, Savannah Guthrie asked the actress about the various reasons that the jury might have had for not believing her. 36-year-old Texas native said, quote, "They had sat in those seats and heard over 3 weeks of non-stop, relentless testimony from paid employees. And towards the end of the trial, randos, as I say." That's right, she literally called the witnesses for Johnny Depp randoms, and many people believe she was even talking about British model Kate Moss. She later also stated that the jurors did not believe her claims, as the 3.5 weeks of testimonies by Johnny Depp's attorneys was an attempt to portray Heard as a non-credible person. In fact, the Aquaman actress added that she thought the testimonies from Depp's witnesses conditioned the jury not to believe one word that came out of her mouth. Number 3. Therapist notes. Much has been made of the therapist notes that Heard claims would prove Depp physically attacked her. Quote, "There's a binder worth of years of notes dating back to 2011, from the very beginning of my relationship, that were taken by my doctor. After those notes were examined, it was revealed that on one page, the therapist wrote that Heard claimed Depp had hit her and threw her on the floor. Another note 8 months later said that Depp had ripped her nightgown and threw her on the bed. She told Guthrie that the notes represented years and years of real-time explanations of what was going on. Even Bredhoft claimed that her client's medical records were suppressed, which she says were very significant because they showed a pattern going all the way back to 2012 of Heard reporting the domestic violence to her therapist. But if it was so significant, why wasn't it counted? Well, Judge Penny had ruled the notes as hearsay and refused to allow the evidence into the trial, which does make total sense. Number 2. New text evidence. Heard also took issue with texts that weren't allowed into the trial. She actually claimed that the text messages she sent to friends and family during her relationship with Depp are evidence of the domestic violence that she suffered during their marriage. In one message Heard claims she sent her father in 2014, she wrote that Depp kicked her in front of everyone during a private flight. In fact, that very incident was a subject of testimony in the couple's defamation trial as well. And another in 2015 read, quote, "Johnny did a number on me tonight. I'm safe and I'm with my support tonight, but I need some real help. Can I come tomorrow? I called earlier because I thought I had a concussion and I didn't know if I should have called police." By exposing the text messages during her NBC interview, it's clear that she believes this new line of evidence is going to somehow muddy the waters of the case, even though she knows that it wasn't actually allowed in the trial. And number 1, discrediting audio tapes. The audio recordings played during Depp's testimony show her admitting to starting a physical fight between them and downplaying his reaction to the incident. When speaking on NBC with Savannah Guthrie, Heard claimed that the audio tapes were edited. Quote, "What you would hear in those clips are not evidence of what was happening." But when Guthrie said that Heard admitted to starting fights on recorded audio, she said, quote, "I know how much has been made of these audio tapes. They were first leaked online after being edited. What you would hear in those clips are not evidence of what was happening," claiming that the 20-second clips are not representative of the 2 or 3 hour conversations they came from. But when Guthrie asked her why she hadn't submitted the full recordings, she just said, "I'm not a lawyer." Well, now she is really trying to discredit those tapes and insinuate that the trial was rigged. Number 10. Met Gala broken nose claim. Amber Heard appeared to change her story when being questioned about the 2014 Met Gala incident, where she claimed to have a broken nose. The actor's lawyers caught her in yet another lie by presenting photos of her looking uninjured the next day. Heard was cross-examined by Depp's lawyer Camille Vasquez, who grilled the actress about looking fresh-faced at an event after she alleged that Depp hit her in the face, leading her to believe her nose was broken. The court was shown how the next night, she was photographed at an event with Depp to honor the comedian Don Rickles, with absolutely no signs of injury to her nose. It was then that she decided to backpedal, telling the court, quote, "For the record, I don't know that it was broken. You should see what it looked like under the makeup." By going back and forth like this, it made her seem as though she was unable to get her story straight. Number 9. Court editing photos. Heard's team produced multiple examples of photographic evidence of bruises to her face and body that they claim were caused by Depp. One set of photos in particular caught everyone's attention, including Depp's defense team, who claimed that Heard had edited the picture to make her injuries seem worse. When cross-examined, she claimed that they were 2 separate photos, one with the light on and one without. But in the final week of testimony, Depp's team called her out on it. They brought a metadata expert to the stand to weigh in. Norbert Brian Neumeister concluded that the photos don't match forensically and that they all had to go through some type of transformation to change sizes. It turns out that some of the photos were professionally edited with separate software not found on an iPhone. Goes to show you, it was also the small details that made the jury question Heard's credibility. Live streaming. Now, Depp didn't just win the trial because he was credible, but also because he was likable and insanely popular. The Hollywood actor has both charisma and undeniable star power, which speaks for itself, and his defense team knew that. The Pirates of the Caribbean star has a sea of dedicated fans around the globe who've seen him grow up on screen ever since his first major acting role in 1986's Nightmare on Elm Street. The trial was followed online by millions of people tuning into live streams, many of them generating memes in real life throughout the proceedings. Praise and support for Depp can be seen all around the internet, while Heard, on the other hand, has received vast amounts of ridicule. In fact, fans of Depp queued for hours daily to secure coveted seats in the public gallery for the trial held in Fairfax, Virginia. Depp's fans also waged a massive campaign on social media in support of the actor, with the hashtag Justice for Johnny Depp. Number 7. The James Franco elevator video. While Heard was on the stand, Depp's lawyers brought up a late-night visit by Franco to Heard's apartment in May 2016, which depicted the two getting physically close. When asked about the reason he came to her apartment that night, she said, quote, "Because he was my friend, and he lived next door, quite literally next door." When Depp's lawyers lawyers asked her to explain footage that shows Franco laying his head on her shoulder, Heard vehemently denied any implications of infidelity. The footage was significant because Heard previously testified that Depp kicked her to the floor of a private plane after he accused her of cheating on him with Franco while filming the Adderall Diaries earlier that year. While the footage is somewhat ambiguous, it definitely led the jury to question the nature of Heard's relationship with Franco. Number 6, the mystery poop. Perhaps one of the most bizarre moments in the trial, Depp accused Heard of defecating in the bed that they shared after a fight on her birthday in 2016. A photo of the alleged incident was shared in court, sparking a Saturday Night Live sketch and fueling the hashtag #AmberTurd. Heard denied defecating in the bed, saying that the couple's Yorkshire Terrier, Boo, who had bowel control problems, was the real issue, as their dog would often burrow in the bed, sometimes having accidents. Heard said that the dog was on the bed while she was packing, so a bathroom accident could have been overlooked when she and her friend left. When her lawyer, Elaine Bredhoft, asked if her and her friends tried to pull a prank on Depp, she said, absolutely not. Even adding, quote, that's not something a bunch of 30-year-old women would think is funny. Unfortunately, Heard's version of events here just didn't sound believable. Number 5, the infamous Bruise kit. Throughout the trial, Heard's choice of makeup has been a major talking point across social media. Her cross-examination began with her recollection of several instances before and after her divorce from Depp, and her use of makeup to cover bruises. Vasquez questioned Heard about instances when Heard testified Depp whacked her in the face while wearing very large rings on his fingers. But these photos shown to the jury pointed out the lack of bruises on Heard's face. She came prepared with an explanation saying, quote, if you want to cover a bruise, you obviously put foundation first, concealer, and then on top of that, I like to use a bruise kit. And then realizing what she said, she quickly corrected herself, saying, quote, not a bruise kit, it's a theater makeup kit, but it was too late. The slip-up sparked conversation among TikTok users, a number of whom suggested that bruise kits are usually used to apply the appearance of bruises for theoretical purposes, rather than cover them up. Number 4, the severed finger. Number 4, the severed finger. Depp said that his finger was severed during a fight with Amber Heard about a month after their 2015 wedding, when she flew out to Australia to visit him while filming Pirates of the Caribbean 6. Depp said Heard arrived in Australia feeling very upset about how the meeting with Depp's lawyers had been conducted, feeling that one of the lawyers she met had been, quote, rude and dismissive. Later that same day, she started banging on doors, screaming obscenities, and wanting to have a physical altercation. At that point, Heard followed him to the bar and started yelling at him for drinking and proceeded to throw a bottle of vodka at him. Depp said that the bottle flew past his face and smashed on the ground behind him. He said that Heard then picked up a second bottle and threw it at him. At that time, it made contact with his hand, slicing off his middle right finger. Depp then described in gruesome detail how his finger looked after it was severed, which was enough to send shivers down anyone's spine. Number 3, the audio recording. Depp's attorney, Camille Vasquez, set the tone from the jump as she attempted to frame Heard as a physically aggressive party in the marriage, playing numerous recordings that appeared to demonstrate Heard taunting Depp's age and career. The audio recordings played during Johnny Depp's testimony showed Heard admitting to starting a physical fight between them and downplaying his reaction to the incident. They were discussing their explosive March 2015 Australia fight that resulted in Depp's right middle finger being severed at the tip. In the audio, Depp is heard saying he wants to remove himself from the situation to de-escalate and escape the fighting, while Heard was urging him to stop running away so that they can resolve their dispute. In what was basically a confession, she said, quote, I'm sorry, I hit you like this, but I didn't punch you. She also told him to grow up and called him a baby. The recording was damning evidence which got the jury to reconsider that it might have been Heard who was the abusive one in the relationship. Number 2, Depp's closing argument. Depp, who said he waited 6 years to tell his story, spent 4 days on the stand defending himself against Heard's allegation, which he called, quote, heinous and disturbing. He told the court that the actress's accusations were not based in any species of truth, and that he just wants to clear his name. Depp claimed that Heard would verbally decimate him or send him into a tailspin or depression and attack him by slapping him, often shoving him, throwing remotes at his head, or throwing wine in his face. He said that in frustration, rage, and anger, she would strike out. Depp testified that he never physically abused Heard or any other woman. He maintained that Heard was the instigator in the relationship, who would constantly push him to become embroiled in profane arguments. While on the stand, Depp's testimony was heartfelt and he managed to be more likable while defending himself. Number 1. Admitting to the op-ed. During Amber Heard's cross-questioning by Vasquez, the actress admitted to having written the 2018 op-ed about the Pirates of the Caribbean star. While being on the stand, Heard, who previously stated that the op-ed was not about Depp, admitted that she wrote it as a way to prove people supported him against all odds. Heard made it clear that she was extremely upset with just how many people stood up for Depp despite the allegations. Pursuing a round of heated cross-questioning, Vasquez asked Heard whether she expected so many people to testify on behalf of Depp, asking her if she expected witnesses like Depp's former partner Kate Moss to speak in favor of Depp and refute Heard's prior claims. The Aquaman star then fired back, saying, quote, "I know how many people will come out and say whatever for him. That's his power. That's why I wrote the op-ed." And just like that, Depp's team scored a major point. Number 10. Amber Heard's ex-assistant speaks out. Kate James, who worked as Amber Heard's personal assistant for 3 years between 2012 and 2015, testified via video that in a recorded deposition, Amber Heard screamed at her when she tried to negotiate her salary of $50,000 per year, which is half of what she would normally make as a full-time celebrity personal assistant. She alleged that Heard screamed at her when she asked for a higher salary. James said that Heard also regularly yelled at her over the phone, often in the early morning between 2 to 4 a.m. Goes to show you that talking down to your assistants often comes back to bite you. Number 9. Kate Moss's 3-minute testimony. British model Kate Moss, who dated Depp between 1994 and 1998, testified that he never pushed her down a flight of stairs. This was important because it directly contradicted Heard's testimony earlier in the trial when she referred to an unverified rumor that Depp once pushed Moss down the stairs. Moss crushed those rumors by testifying to what really happened while the two were staying at a resort in Jamaica, stating that she in fact slipped down the stairs and screamed because she didn't know what was happening to her. It was then that Depp carried her to her room and got her medical attention. Number 8. Pirates of the Caribbean 6. It was revealed during the trial that Depp missed out on a $22.5 million payday as a direct result of the op-ed written by Heard. Depp's manager, Jack Wiggum, testified that the allegations made by Heard proved to be catastrophic for Depp's career, even though he was never actually named in the article. While testifying remotely, he said that Disney's president of production, Sean Bailey, and Pirates of the Caribbean producer Jerry Bruckheimer verbally sealed a deal around 2016 to pay Depp a whopping $22.5 million for the 6th film in the franchise. However, Wiggum was never able to revive the deal following the controversy surrounding the allegations. Number 8. Dr. David Kipper's testimony. Depp's private doctor described what really happened on the night the actor's finger was severed, corroborating Depp's version of events. Turns out the doctor was staying on an island in Australia on March 7th of 2015 when Depp sent Dr. Kipper a text that night saying that his finger had been severed. The doctor arrived on the scene, treated the wound, and took him to the emergency room. Depp then texted him several days later blaming himself for the incident. He later admitted in court that he initially lied to protect Heard, saying, quote, "I didn't want to get her in trouble." So while Depp admitted that at first he lied to Dr. Kipper, it only served to make him more likable. Number 6. Dr. Shannon Curry's evaluation. The clinical psychologist who evaluated Heard for 12 hours on 2 separate days in December said that she was, quote, "grossly exaggerating symptoms of PTSD." Dr. Shannon Curry's testimony was the nail in the coffin for Heard's crumbling defense. The forensic clinical psychologist said that Heard did not have PTSD and was merely exaggerating symptoms. Instead, Curry concluded that Heard had a very sophisticated way of minimizing any personal problems, and that her evaluation supported 2 possible diagnoses: borderline personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder. So not at all what Heard claimed to have. Number 5. The private jet incident. When Johnny Depp's friend and sound engineer Keenan Wyatt appeared in court, he narrated an incident when Heard yelled at him during a private flight. He also mentioned that he had never seen Depp attack anybody, and spoke about a time he joined the former couple on a private jet flight from Boston to Los Angeles in May of 2014. It was then that he noticed Heard was giving Depp the cold shoulder, and at one point he tried to comfort her by telling her that Depp cares about her, which resulted in Heard yelling at him, saying, quote, "How dare you talk to me," and screaming at him to get away from her. It's safe to say this incident helped the jury make out her character pretty well. Number 4. Christi Dombrowski's testimony. Depp's sister testified that the actor swore to never repeat domestic violence after their mother was physically aggressive towards them. Christi Dombrowski, Depp's older sister by 3 years, was the first witness to testify in the defamation trial. When she took to the stand, she spoke about their experience as children, growing up with their mother, whom she described as, quote, high-strung, nervous, and often angry. When speaking of the difficulties that she and Depp experienced growing up, she said that as they got older, they decided that they were never going to repeat anything similar to their childhood in their own home. Number 3. Johnny Depp takes the stand. Depp returned to the stand during the 6th and final week of his defamation trial to refute Heard's testimony that he attacked her during their honeymoon in 2015. Following Heard's claim that Depp slammed her against the wall and threatened to kill her, Depp told the court that it was actually her who attacked him and gave him a black eye. His defense then produced photos of the former couple with waitstaff that showed Depp with an injured eye. He went on to call Heard's testimony unimaginably brutal, cruel, and false, while adding, quote, "No matter what happens, I did tell the truth, and I've spoken up for what I've been carrying on my back reluctantly for 6 years. Number 2. The ACLU speaks out. Terence Doherty, the General Counsel and Chief Operating Officer of the ACLU, said in a recorded deposition that Heard only donated $1.3 million of the $3.5 million she pledged to the organization from her divorce settlement. When Depp and Heard reached a divorce settlement in 2016, the actress announced that she would donate the entirety of her $7 million divorce settlement to charity, saying that the money would be split between the two organizations, the American Civil Liberties Union and Children's Hospital Los Angeles, which meant the ACLU should have received $3.5 million. But Mr. Doherty came with the receipts, claiming that the organization received 4 donations from Heard, which totaled $1.3 million, and only one of those payments was from Heard directly. This revelation definitely affected her credibility as a witness from that point on. And number 1, the explosive revelation from TMZ. The testimony from former journalist Morgan Tremaine established that the celebrity news publication had been able to publish exclusive photos and videos of Heard during the early stages of her contentious divorce from Depp, based on tips it had received about her whereabouts. In this case, Tremaine testified about a TMZ exclusive video from 2016, when she filed for a temporary restraining order against Depp. Tremaine said he dispatched paparazzi to stay outside the Los Angeles courthouse, based on an anonymous tip to capture photos of her. This revelation was indeed significant, as Heard had previously testified that she was caught off guard by the presence of the photographers, again catching her in a web of her own lies. Coming in at number 10, when Depp's sister testified that the actor swore to never repeat domestic violence after their mother was physically aggressive towards them. Christi Dombrowski, Depp's older sister by 3 years, was the first witness to testify in the defamation trial. When she took the stand, she spoke about their experience as children growing up with their mother, whom she described as a high-strung, nervous, and often angry person. She said that when we were older, we decided that once we had our own home, we were never going to repeat in our own home anything similar to our childhood. And coming in at number 9, when Amber Heard's ex-assistant said that the actress verbally harassed her on multiple occasions. Kate James, who worked as Amber Heard's personal assistant for 3 years between 2012 to 2015, testified via video in a recorded deposition that Heard screamed at her when she tried to negotiate her salary of $50,000 per year, which is half of what she would normally make as a full-time celebrity personal assistant, saying that she leapt out of her chair and put her face approximately 4 inches from my face, spitting in my face, saying how dare she ask for the salary that she's asking for. James said that Heard also regularly screamed at her over the phone and would send a barrage of horrible text messages to her, often in the early morning hours between 2 to 4 a.m. Number 8, when Kate Moss testified that Depp, Her ex-boyfriend never pushed her down a flight of stairs. British model Kate Moss, who dated Depp between 1994 and 1998, testified that he never pushed her down a flight of stairs. Earlier in the trial, during Heard's testimony, she referred to an unverified rumor that Depp once pushed Moss down the stairs. Although Moss has never publicly accused Depp of misconduct, Moss then crushed those rumors by testifying to what really happened while the two were staying in a resort in Jamaica, saying that she in fact slipped down the stairs and Depp tended to her, saying that she screamed because she didn't know what was happening to her and Depp carried her to the room and got her medical attention. Number 7. When Depp's manager said the actor missed out on a $22 million payday for Pirates of the Caribbean 6 due to the catastrophic allegations made by Heard. While testifying remotely, Jack Wiggum, Depp's talent manager, and Disney's president of production Sean Bailey and Pirates of the Caribbean producer Jerry Bruckheimer verbally sealed a deal around 2016 to pay Depp $22.5 million for the 6th film in the franchise. However, Wiggum was never able to revive the deal following Heard's allegations in 2018 in her Washington Post op-ed, which she detailed her experience with domestic abuse. Even though Depp himself was never named in the article, Wiggum testified that since the fall of 2018, Depp has been relegated to roles in lower-paying independent movies and hasn't filmed a movie since 2020. Number 6. When the clinical psychologist who evaluated Heard said she was aggressively exaggerating her symptoms of PTSD. Dr. Shannon Curry, a forensic clinical psychologist who evaluated Heard for over 12 hours in 2 days in December, testified in court that Heard did not have PTSD and appeared to be grossly exaggerating her symptoms. The result of Ms. Heard's evaluation supported 2 diagnoses: borderline personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder. Curry concluded that Heard had a very sophisticated way of minimizing any personal problems while having a lot of inner hostility and externalizing blame. Number 5. When Depp's private doctor described what happened the night his finger was severed. Dr. David Kipper, Depp's private doctor, described his experience on the night the actor's finger was severed. The doctor was saying, on an island in Australia on March 7, 2015. Depp sent Dr. Kipper a text that night saying his finger was severed, according to the record shown in court. When Dr. Kipper arrived, he treated the wound and took him to the emergency room. Depp then texted him several days later, again blaming himself for the incident. But later in the trial, when Depp took to the stand, the actor testified that during a heated argument, Heard threw 2 bottles at him, with one making contact with his little finger and slicing it off. Depp said that he initially lied about how the tip of his right middle finger was cut off rather than telling him that Heard threw a bottle at him, saying on the stand that he didn't want her to get in trouble. Number 4. When Heard testified about the alleged harassment campaign against her and the various death threats that she received as a result. Heard told jurors that a harassment campaign waged against her by Depp has left her humiliated and scarred for life from multiple death threats. Heard was the final witness in the 6-week libel trial Depp brought against his wife. She said that Depp had been fixated on revenge ever since she filed for divorce and obtained the restraining order against him, testifying that, quote, Johnny promised he'd ruin her life, her career, and take her life from her. She noted the social media campaigns against her and the mockery she has received while testifying about her assault, as well as the overwhelming support for Depp in the courtroom, stating that she just wants him to leave her alone and that he has taken enough of my voice, and that she has the right to tell her story. 3. When Depp countered Heard's testimony, calling it unimaginably brutal, cruel, and all false. Johnny Depp returned to the stand during the 6-week and final week of his defamation trial against Heard, refuting her testimony that she attacked her during their honeymoon in 2015. Following Heard's testimony that Depp slammed her against the wall and she feared he would kill her, Depp testified that it was actually her who attacked him, alleging that she gave him a black eye. His defense then produced photos of the former couple with waitstaff that showed Depp with an injured eye. The actor also accused Heard of abusing her sister, Whitney Henriquez, saying that he has certainly seen Heard push her around. He then went on to call Heard's testimony unimaginably brutal, cruel, and all false, calling her allegations ridiculous, humiliating, and savage, addressing the court, saying that no matter what happens, I did tell the truth, and that I've spoken up for what I've been carrying on my back reluctantly for 6 years. Number 2. When Depp's former girlfriend Ellen Barkin testified that he once threw a wine bottle in her direction. In a recorded deposition, Ellen Barkin, who dated Depp for less than a year in 1994, said the actor was jealous and controlling during their relationship. Most shockingly, when the two were filming Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas in 1997, Barkin described an incident where Depp threw a wine bottle in her direction during a heated argument between Depp and his friends. And coming in at number 1, when the ACLU said that Heard only donated $1.3 million of the $3.5 million she pledged to the organization from her divorce settlement. Terrence Doherty, the general counsel and chief operating officer of the ACLU, said in a recorded deposition that the organization received 4 donations from Heard, which totaled $1.3 million. However, when Depp and Heard reached a divorce settlement in 2016, the actress announced that she would donate the entirety of her $7 million divorce settlement to charity, saying that the money would be split between 2 organizations, the American Civil Liberties Union and the Children's Hospital Los Angeles, which meant the ACLU should have received $3.5 million. But it turns out only one of those payments from Heard was actually from her directly, a payment of $350,000 back in August of 2016. The other payments were from Depp and from a fund set up by Elon Musk. Later in the trial, when Heard took to the stand, the actress said that she still planned to donate all the money she promised, claiming it was the trial, in fact, that was stalling her payments.
Number 10. Isaac Baruch. Isaac Baruch is the witness from all the way back in the beginning days of the trial. While his testimony itself isn't weird, he certainly is, and I mean that in the nicest way possible. He and Johnny Depp met back when they were teenagers, and he was Johnny and Amber's neighbor. The Pirates of the Caribbean actor had been helping Isaac financially for quite some time, allowing him to stay in Depp's penthouse rent-free and giving him about $100,000. Isaac is an artist, and he certainly acts like it too, with all the theatrics and funny ways of speaking there is. He very theatrically described his relationship with Depp and just how indebted he is to the man. Felt very Shakespearean. It was all very sweet, but also a little flamboyant and funny. He also stated that while he lived near the couple, he heard fights going on. Amber also came to him and said that Johnny had thrown a plate at her, although he admits that he didn't see any bruising on her face. He then laughed on the stand when Amber's lawyer asked him about his knowledge of makeup and if he were able to tell if Amber had covered her bruises. Quote, "I'm looking at a cheek, I'm looking at her chin, I'm looking at the other side of her face, I'm looking at the whole thing, and I don't see anything." Number 9. Jennifer Howell. While not weird herself, Jennifer Howell gave some extremely odd and cryptic words to the court when she contradicted another key witness of Amber Heard's. Jennifer had employed Amber's sister, Whitney Henriquez, and testified briefly in court. Jennifer testified that she sent an email back in the 2020 libel trial begging her to tell the truth. Although in the libel trial this evidence was pretty much dismissed, in this trial she is given some insight into what exactly that means. She says that Whitney had confided in her that Amber was the aggressor in the fight, and apparently Whitney thought that Amber was, quote, going to kill Johnny. She also directly contradicted the severed finger story, stating that Whitney, Amber's sister, had told her that Amber had indeed cut off Johnny's finger during their explosive fight in Australia, and not that he had cut it himself as Amber's team is proposing. Interestingly, Jennifer's testimony was severely limited again by the judge, but it directly contradicts what Amber has stated as fact. Number 8. Starling Jenkins. Again, while not weird himself, the testimony he gave was a little odd. Starling is a longtime member of Johnny Depp's security staff, and he testified that the morning after Amber's 30th birthday, he was informed by Amber that she, quote, got into a fight with Johnny last night. He said that she threw his phone, wallet, credit cards, and passport over the balcony and onto the streets below. Starling then said that he used the Find My iPhone program to track down Depp's phone to Skid Row, a neighborhood known for its homeless population, which was not far from Johnny and Amber's apartment building. Starling then said he approached a homeless man about the phone who was, quote, honest and returned it. I gave him a reward for it. $420, chicken tacos, chips,
apples, and Fiji water. I guess all's well that ends well? Number 7, the clinical psychologist. Okay, this one's a two-parter because it's honestly so frustrating with just how many yes men are involved in this case. Dr. Shannon Curry, a forensic clinical psychologist who evaluated Heard for 12 hours in December over 2 days, testified in court that Heard did not have PTSD and appeared to be, quote, grossly exaggerating symptoms. The result of Ms. Heard's evaluation supported 2 diagnoses: borderline personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder. Curry said she concluded that Heard had, quote, a very sophisticated way of minimizing any personal problems while having a lot of inner hostility and externalizing blame. What I don't understand about this is why any clinical psychologist would feel at all comfortable diagnosing anyone with anything after only speaking with them for 12 hours. Typically, psychologists have to work with patients for weeks or even up to months before they are sure of any presence of any mental illness of any kind. Number 6, the clinical and forensic psychologist. Now we've got Dr. Don Hughes, another clinical psychologist who basically testifies to the exact opposite of what Dr. Shannon Curry said. She diagnosed Heard with PTSD, quote, based on intimate partner violence suffered at DEPP's hands. She based this on 29 hours worth of clinical interviews with Heard, as well as her reviews of court transcripts, notes taken by Heard's previous therapists, interviews with therapists, and other records. Dr. Hughes believes the level of control and surveillance DEPP had over Heard's life was a marker of intimate partner violence, which made it harder for Heard to leave the relationship. Quote, even though she yelled and hit him and said some terrible things to him, it was never able to shift the balance of power in the relationship. I figured psychologists would have a bit more decorum before diagnosing anything. It just feels weird. And this doctor only spent 29 hours with Amber, which I guess is marginally better than the 12 hours Dr. Curry had, but still, something's fishy. Number 5, Tracy Jacobs. Tracy Jacobs was Johnny Depp's agent for 30 years until the actor terminated their contract in 2016. She said in a pre-recorded deposition shown during the trial that Johnny once asked her to kill a version of the 2018 film London Fields because it had a scene where Amber was nude in it. She said Depp sent her a series of angry all-caps emails instructing her to shut down the film. Quote, it is in Amber's contract that there will be no nudity and our agents are weak and insipid. Will you please call these motherfuckers and you and Jake get on this immediately. It must be shut down or I will sue them 18 ways from fucking Sunday. These people are nobodies in this business and they should be made to understand that we will ruin them instantly. If Amber willingly did the nude scene, it's so weird that Johnny would be so up in arms about it unless he was extremely defensive of their relationship. Number 4, Kate Moss. Okay, this one is more so fascinating than weird, I'd say. Model Kate Moss, who dated Depp between 1994 and 1998, testified that Depp never pushed her down a flight of stairs. Earlier in the trial, during Heard's testimony, she referred to an unverified rumor that Depp once pushed Moss down the stairs. Moss has never publicly accused Depp of misconduct. Moss said that she slipped and that Depp then tended to her. Quote, I screamed because I didn't know what had happened to me and I was in pain, and he came running back to help me and carried me to my room and got me medical attention. Kate said she slipped while the two were at a resort in Jamaica while they were dating. Quote, we were leaving the room and Johnny left the room before I did, and there had been a rainstorm, and as I left the room, I slid down the stairs and hurt my back. Number 3, Ben King. Not weird himself, but the moment he witnessed went viral for just how dumb it was. Johnny Depp's house manager endured being asked a question by Amber's lawyer, who then appeared to object to his own question. King took the stand and said he heard, quote, hysterical sobbing as he entered the house in Australia in March 2015. He said he saw Depp's doctor, Dr. David Kipper, rummaging through the bin looking for Depp's severed finger. Eventually, King found the finger and put it on ice. Heard's lawyer, Ben Rottenborn, asked King a question, but Depp's lawyer shot it down with an objection. Rottenborn then tried to rephrase the question. Quote, you don't know what could cause damage to Mr. Depp's hand while you were there on March 8th, correct? Rottenborn then said, quote, objection, hearsay, before the judge stated, quote, wait, you asked the question. To which the clearly frazzled Rottenborn said, quote, oh, okay. Number 2, Dr. David Spiegel. Okay, yeah, this guy is just weird. While on the stand, Dr. Spiegel stated, quote, I've only seen him interact with people in interviews, when he wasn't in movies. To which Johnny's attorney responded, quote, Willy Wonka doesn't matter to you? You see him in that movie, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Did you look at that one while you were looking at his cognitive processing speed? Instead of answering immediately, a confused Spiegel began smacking his lips and opening and closing his mouth while rubbing his chin. He then eventually said, quote, do I have to answer that question, Your Honor? Depp shook his head in bewilderment while observing the interaction in court. Spiegel was directed to answer the question and told the court that he had not seen any of the projects mentioned by the actor's legal team. So freaking weird. Number 1, Alejandro Romero. Alejandro Romero is kind of a beast. He's a doorman at the Eastern Columbia building and became extremely notable for his behavior in a pre-recorded video that was shown to the court, where he testifies that he was asked to check for an intruder, but he believes the scratching at the door which had startled them was just a dog. But throughout the whole video, he was vaping and blowing the fattest clouds at the camera. At times, the testimony had the jury and DEPP laughing at just how ludicrous it all was. Number 10, the honeymoon phase. Back when Amber Heard first gave her testimony on her first day on the stand, she detailed the early stages of her and Johnny's romance. It was a whirlwind and described as incredible in the beginning. She lets us in on how good it was before turning sour while on the stand, stating, quote, "We talked about books, music, and poetry. We liked a lot of the same stuff. Obscure writers and interesting books and pieces of poetry I haven't heard anyone else know or reference or like." After they first met, they were basically madly in love with each other and felt like they could connect intellectually. She describes Johnny as very well-read and charismatic, and she would routinely leave his office with a few books he'd lent her. Quote, "I knew who he was. I wasn't a fan of his work. I wasn't familiar with him, but I knew who he was. I knew he was one of the most famous people in the world. It was weird because he's twice my age and this famous actor, and here we are getting along about old books and the blues. I thought it was unusual and remarkable. I left there feeling like, wow." Number 9, when she fell in love. Amber also recounts when she felt like she officially fell in love with Johnny. She says it was in 2011, after they had finished filming their movie, The Rum Diary, and were traveling the world to promote it. Quote, "I felt like this man knew me and saw me in a way that nobody else had. He made me feel seen, made me feel like $1 million. That kind of feeling where he just lavished gifts, lavished expressions of love, and how he'd never met a woman like me. I remember he took the foil off of a bottle and put it on my ring finger, and I had only been with him like days, maybe it was weeks at the time. It just felt very intense." At the time of this romance, Johnny was in the process of separating from Vanessa Paradis. Even though they never married, they were considered in a common law relationship, which goes through the same divorce proceedings, especially if children are involved. But Johnny similarly fell for her. When he was on the stand, he called her his perfect partner. Number 8, Amber recounts the first time Johnny hit her. The first time Johnny Depp allegedly hit Amber Heard has been revealed while she was on the stand. It occurred after she asked about a tattoo of his, the famous Wino. The tattoo came from Johnny's relationship with Winona Ryder, and it used to say Winona Forever, but after they broke up, he changed it to Wino. Apparently, when she poked fun at the tattoo, he slapped her when she started to laugh. Quote, "I will never forget it. It changed my life." She also added that he was inebriated at the time of the slap. Although Johnny did say that Amber took issues with his tattoo, he denied hitting her over the issue though and characterized it as an absurd reason to hit someone. 7. The turn of the relationship. Amber has revealed to us just how the relationship started to turn from amazing and idyllic to terrifying. In a retelling, Amber said their relationship changed after Johnny broke his longtime sobriety after a period of abstaining from alcohol. She describes him as jealous and often accusing her of having affairs with other people. Amber also told the court that Johnny's alleged attacks would coincide with him using the substances he swore he would never do again. Johnny, for his part, previously testified and refuted the idea that he was ever out of control while he was inebriated. Although Amber describes one specific instance where she said she was headbutted and repeatedly punched in the face by Depp in an attack she believed was going to end in her death. Quote, "He was pummeling me. I thought, this is how I die. He's going to kill me now. He's going to kill me and he won't even have realized it." Number 6, more instances of harm. Amber also recounts several other instances of harm. She describes being penetrated by a bottle in which she alleged was harm done by Johnny. She said she woke up to hear Marilyn Manson music playing and then noticed a brown substance on the wall, which she later identified as blood. Depp had previously testified about his finger having been cut off and about using his blood and paint to write messages on the walls of one of the couple's homes. Depp claimed Heard had become enraged, throwing a bottle of vodka at him and severing his finger. But for her part, Amber says that when she woke up, his finger was already severed and she discovered the messages on the wall in his blood. Amber also revealed that she was hurt from the bottle. Quote, "I wasn't thinking about pain. I was heartbroken. I realized eventually that I could be hurt because I was bleeding. But I convinced myself it wasn't broken or that the bottle wasn't broken or it would be a lot worse. And the discomfort paled in comparison to the heartbreak. I had just married this man." Number 5, Amber hitting Johnny. Amber also describes how she had hit Depp, in what she alleges was the only instance of actually doing that. In their LA penthouse after an argument, Heard accuses Depp of cheating on her with a woman he'd been with years before, saying she found out he had been to the woman's house after she and Depp were married. She told the court she yelled obscenities at Depp and at one point went into their neighboring penthouse, which Depp also owned, to see her sister who had been staying there. Heard alleged that Depp followed her there and grabbed at her. She said she returned to their shared penthouse onto the top floor with her sister. He threw a can up at him, then bolted up the stairs and grabbed the back of her head. She then states that her sister put herself between the couple, and in that moment, Heard feared her sister might fall down the stairs, and she saw Depp raise his hand to hurt her. So she swung at him. Quote, "In all my relationship with Johnny, I hadn't landed a blow. For the first time I hit him, like actually hit him square in the face, but he didn't push my sister down the stairs." Number 4, Amber wanting to leave before. Amber also revealed to the court that she had tried leaving him before 2016. She said she was heartbroken trying to reconcile the good and bad parts of their relationship. Quote, "I wanted to want to leave him. I wanted him to get better. And he expressed to me so many times when he was in that period of getting clean and sober, 'You saved my life, baby girl, you saved my life.' Everyone else is saying that to me, and I believed it." Number 3, Amber readjusts her testimony. And now, on Monday, Amber is back on the stand to continue recounting her relationship with Johnny. In the first few minutes of her being back on the stand, she readjusts her testimony and tells the court that the alleged harm began earlier than she previously recalled before. Quote, "I'm embarrassed to say I think I would have liked to believe that the period of time in which I fell in love with Johnny and he wasn't violent to me lasted longer than it did." But she said she reviewed notes from her therapist and says that there was harm done in 2012 rather than 2013 like she previously stated. When asked by her attorney why she didn't recall these moments earlier, she stated, quote, "That's not how my memory works." Number 2, audio recordings of Johnny filming Amber. At the time of writing this, audio recordings were played from 2015 when Amber was being recorded by Johnny without her knowledge. When she discovers that he's filming her, Heard tells Depp that recording her is, quote, "secretive and deceitful. You had trouble with me before when you said to me that you didn't feel like you were told I was recording you. So please stop, please stop." Johnny then says something too quiet for us to hear before loudly telling Amber to listen to him. Quote, "You are not a school teacher. Shut the f*** up. Listen to me and then you can f***ing respond. Understand? You ain't nobody's f***ing mom. You ain't no school teacher. Don't pretend to be f***ing authoritative with me. You don't f***ing exist." Number 1, Amber addresses viral audio where she admits to hitting Johnny. Although she previously stated that she'd only hit Johnny once at the top of the stairs to defend her sister, there was a viral recording that says otherwise. In the clip, Amber says to Johnny, quote, "I was hitting you, I was not punching you. Babe, you're not punched." Although Amber admits on tape to starting the fight, Amber on the stand claimed that it was a physically intimate consensual hitting that took place. She says that Johnny hit her in the bedroom provocatively and she reactively hit him back. She said the incident in the clip is when she barricaded herself in a bedroom and Depp tried to break in. She hit him to get him out of the room. Quote, "I hit his arms, his body as he was trying to prevent me from closing the door. I knew what he would do to me when he got to the other side."
And number 8, growth. One of the major signs of growth is having more tolerance for discomfort, but also having less tolerance for nonsense. As we continue to grow, we tend to internalize attitudes that were directed towards us by our parents, relationships, or influential caretakers throughout our development. With Johnny being told he was addicted, filled with rage, Amber would go on to show the world pictures of Johnny when he was passed out to prove that his substance and alcohol use were out of control because he couldn't remember. While she claimed that she urged him to get sober, Johnny's brain would have started to engage in this self-sabotaging thought that he would tell himself just to give up and not to try anymore. With his thoughts telling him why even bother if you're never going to succeed anyways, he may have felt like he just didn't have the energy to get anything done. While Amber forced him to feel like a failure for years, he would start to grow with similar self-sabotaging attitudes towards himself. And while he can't change his past as an adult, he certainly has been growing to understand how he can identify these self-sabotaging thoughts that he has internalized. And he has been consciously choosing new ways to combat them so they don't get the best of him. However, with saying that, when we fall victim to our critical inner voice and listen to the directives, we often engage in self-limiting or self-sabotaging behaviors that hurt us in our daily lives. It's going to be hard for Johnny to figure out how he can cultivate the power to select his own thoughts, and we just have to support him as he gets back up on his feet again. Number 7, his responsibility. Who you are is never your fault. However, it does become your responsibility. When you mess up, you have to make up for it, which leads to the idea who Johnny Depp is today is not his fault, but it is his responsibility to claim who he is and to love himself for who he is. When you choose to be responsible for things that aren't your fault, which impact and affect your life, you immediately become empowered and you feel free because you finally realize that you have the power to change your outcomes. When you first take responsibility, while you can't get away from blaming others for your unhappiness, it seems like Johnny has been used to being angry and losing it because he continues to blame others for his downfall and he's turned to substances, but in reality, all he needs to do is take a step back, get a grip, and remind himself that the person he is really upset with is himself, and allowing himself to get to the situation, allowing it to get the best of him by turning to substances and alcohol. He also let Amber get the best of him by taking responsibility for his own life, wants and needs, emotions. He will realize that his faults are in the past, and the present, there's responsibility. Now Johnny has choices in his life. He will hold himself a prisoner in the past, or he will create his life in the present. And while he continues to move forward to free himself from all the scandal, it's going to be hard for him to completely leave behind the past of Amber's grasp. So while he tries to reclaim his power to set himself from the past and from the pain, abuse, hurt, and disappointment, it may look like he's self-sabotaging himself. However, he's just on a journey to make a comeback, and as long as he believes in himself, he's on the right track. Number 6, ego and soul. Desires that arise in agitation are more aligned with your ego. Desires that arise in stillness are more aligned with your soul. Research has shown us that ego can be held responsible for many negative human traits that include, but are not limited to, criticizing and judging others, acting manipulative, being inflexible and rigid, having severe mood swings, possessing a constant need for praise and approval, and feeling fearful and anxious. With all the negative traits having a very serious consequence, it can make a person's life a misery, and a lot of these traits can cause addiction to alcohol, tobacco, and other mild substances. Now, Johnny's ego and soul has the ability to make focus on aspects in the physical world that actually have intolerance towards peace, harmony, and happiness. And he is quick to blame others or raise his voice against the circumstances when anything bad befalls on him. This is a product of ego that constantly strives to make him believe that he is not responsible for his own actions and his surroundings that are responsible for everything going on in his life. Like everything else that is inherited as part of our nature, ego can't be eliminated, as it's a vital part of our individuality. So Johnny has been aiming to destroy it all, when really he only has to aim to bring it under control, because once he has it under control, it will suppress the negative parts that's going on in his head. Number 5, difficult emotions. Procrastination is the refusal or the inability to be with difficult emotions. And while Johnny has this idea of getting back on his feet and leaving the negativity behind in his life, he's opted to forget about his difficult emotions. And while these emotions continue to build up inside him, it will cause the start to become more angry and frustrated over the slightest things. While Johnny has jumped straight away into his career, he is procrastinating on speaking about how he really feels and how his emotions are affecting him. While avoiding the unmanageable emotion negative state, it may seem beneficial for the moment, even if it means closing out the possibilities of success, happiness, or meaningful relationships in the long run. However, it's almost impossible to detect the negative outcomes of an action that seems beneficial in the present. In terms of behavior, it seems like Johnny may have adopted an emotional route for self-sabotage as a reasonable solution to help him deal with his problems and to help him justify his actions. While he continues to avoid discussing personal ideas or feelings with friends or family, he's also avoiding asking for help, especially when he is facing emotional issues. While he continues to avoid his emotional involvement, he can avoid emotional suffering, and he's denying himself a change at happiness, meaningful relationships, or friendships in order to avoid any former confirmation. And while he continues to adopt an emotional self-sabotage point of view, as a reasonable solution to his problem, he can't provide himself with a well-thought argument to justify his actions. Number 4, letting go. The moment before we finally let go everything is often when we grip onto everything, and it's the hardest. Sometimes we feel embarrassed or ashamed, and as a consequence, we hold ourselves back socially and we start to push ourselves to be more outward and open. While we may want to stop engaging in self-sabotaging behavior, the first step involves us to separate from the destructive attitudes that surround the critical inner voices we internalize based on painful early life experiences. While Johnny continues to hold on to his past, he's continued to not forgive and forget, which has caused all of these negative overlays from his past to build up to make him who he is today. Once he realizes he needs to separate the negative overlays from his past, he'll finally be able to uncover who he really is, and he can stop these self-sabotaging behaviors, and he'll finally be granted the power of choosing the person he truly wants to be. But before he can do that, he just needs to let go of his past and talk about what's truly going on with him. Number 3, being grounded. Now, you don't find your ground by looking for stability. You find your ground by relaxing into instability. Striving to be perfect might sound like a good idea, but it often gets in the way of being effective. Perfectionists often struggle with getting started on projects. When they do start, the obsession with the details keeps them from finishing. With Johnny being an actor, he's adopted a perfectionist behavior because he always wants to surprise his fans. Being a perfectionist has caused him to tend towards this all or nothing thinking, and he tends to be harsh on himself when he talks himself out of potential opportunities before he even gets started. Johnny is on a mission to get back into the industry, and that's why we saw him on tour with Jeff Beck, because he loves music, but he knows acting is his life. Johnny didn't want to be the person to sit around and do nothing about the fact that his career was affected by Amber's lies. So while many believe the actor is self-sabotaging his career while jumping around the industry, he's actually using a method to ground himself into the instability of the industry. And it's a pretty smart move. Number 2, hate. They say what you hate the most in others is usually what you hate the most in yourself. People with a negative self-image and low self-esteem are especially vulnerable to self-sabotaging. With Johnny behaving in ways that confirm negative beliefs about himself, you can see that he is close to succeeding, but because he hasn't started to hold back because of the hate he feels for himself, he has started to become so uncomfortable with his life and who he truly is. While he has been told all his life that he will fail, he sometimes even tells himself that he's going to fail. Johnny is holding himself back to an impossible standard that has caused him multiple delays and setbacks, and while it may seem like a positive strategy to aim for things to go as planned without a hitch, when sometimes it goes wrong, he ends up feeling ashamed. Prone to depression, Johnny feels like he's letting everyone down lately, and he has let his health overcome him. And while he continues to follow this negative behavior, it's going to cause him more harm. Johnny needs to acknowledge the way he's feeling, and it will allow him to find his ground back to stability. Coming in at number 1 today, we have becoming his own best friend. The biggest life hack is becoming your own best friend. Everything is easier when you do. Johnny needs to stop being his own enemy because everything going on in his life right now is irrelevant when it comes to his future. Johnny needs to become his own best friend, and he needs to trust that everything going on will eventually settle down and he'll rise to the top. When he starts to trust himself, he'll be able to shoot for something big, and while it may feel overwhelming to do so, it will also prevent him from self-sabotaging his career. As long as he chooses not to get hung up on the idea, he won't waste time on unimportant details. If he truly wants to get healthy, he needs to stop making all or nothing decisions, and he needs to start making some small incremental changes and act on them slowly. This way he can prevent himself from sabotaging his mind, from putting on the brakes. By taking more bite-sized actions, he won't be forced to derail his career, and it all starts with him becoming his own best friend.